Alright, this is now like my fifth time doing this video. Jesus, man. So I'm going to show you how I installed my ZF6 Solo, because this has been one of the biggest pain in the asses out of any job I've ever done, honestly. I've done maybe 5 solo transmission installs on different trucks, cars, whatever. And usually it's pretty simple. If they're light enough, you can just bench press it into place, use your knees if you have to. But for this one, I had to bust out all the tricks, so I figured I'd share some of them. So that orange strap right there, I only used that for a little bit, but I'll get into it later. The main thing I did, I took this big old strap right here, and I hooked that to the side of the cab, underside. I ran it into the transmission tunnel, and then I wrapped it around the transmission, then ran it out to the passenger side and hooked it on the same spot on the opposite end. And what I did with that is I'd crank the strap a few times, get the transmission up a few inches, and then I'd take this gray jack right here without the transmission jack attachment that you're seeing here, just the low profile jack pad. And once I could get that under the transmission, I would jack it up a couple of pumps. That would put some slack in this big load strap here, and then I would take all the slack out of the strap, tighten up the strap some more, and then just kept repeating. Pump the jack, slacken the strap, take the slack out until I could fit this transmission jack attachment under it. And then from there, it was pretty much smooth sailing. I've also got another strap right there, the brighter yellow one that's a little less dirty. I've got that hooked up to the PTO right here, because that PTO is a big unit. It was throwing off the center of gravity of the transmission, and it was leaning towards the driver's side and kind of rotating every time I would lift it up some. So I basically just used that strap hooked to the PTO, and then also hooked to the underside of the cab on the passenger side to keep it from rotating. This orange strap right here, this is just to secure it to the transmission jack, but it's not really worth mentioning. If you have a transmission jack, you know to tie it down. This red jack right here, I'm using it to support the rear end of the transmission just so I can angle it properly. I probably could do that with the transmission jack itself, but the transmission's still full of fluid, so it's about 300 something pounds. It's pretty hard to turn this knob here. And occasionally, here, let me go back. So on the ZF6, the output shaft has 4 bolt holes to hook up to the drive shaft. What I did early on was I took one end of one of these little orange ratchet straps, hooked it into the bolt hole of the output shaft, then hooked it up to somewhere in the rear of the frame just to keep it straight, because sometimes it would go off kilter. And I did the same thing with that strap in the front. I would hook it up to one of the bell housing bolt holes, and I hooked it to the front of the frame, just keeping it from turning. My next trick that really makes any transmission job easier, that I think you should be doing solo install or not, is here, let's see, that's a little blurry right now, but you take a bolt with the same thread pattern as the transmission bell housing bolts, and you cut the head off of it, and then you cut a slit into the top of the bolt, and basically it acts as an extended dowel pin, so you don't have to wait until the transmission's already fucking half an inch from the block itself to get things aligned. With this, before I even have the input shaft into the clutch, I can get everything lined up, and then once it's actually butted up against the engine itself, because you cut that slit in it, you can, hello, it's not pausing, you can come along the back here with a flathead screwdriver after you've got the other bolts installed and just take these bolts out and then put the real ones in. I think that makes any transmission job 1,000 times easier. That's one that I use a lot, honestly. But aside from that, that's pretty much the method. From this point on, I I took a screwdriver into the top of the transmission and I put it into gear just so I could rotate the output shaft and rotate the input shaft at the same time, so I don't have to hope and pray that I got the splines lined up right. It just makes it a lot easier. And all the hard work is done. All I've got to do is turn the output shaft and push until I get it in. And get it bolted up and you're done. One thing I will say, especially with the 7.3 ZF6 combo, I've still got the engine supported by the crane right now, and it's sitting up a little high. If you give the engine hoist a little slack, the engine should lean back a little bit. I couldn't do that because I couldn't get enough downward angle on the transmission for that to line up properly, but the top of the transmission tunnel, right up where the firewall is, really gets in the way of the ZF6 with how bulky it is. A lot of people were saying they had to take the cab up. Personally, I didn't have to do that. I don't know if you can see it there, but it's kind of dented up right there because I didn't really care if I hurt that section a little bit. I just forced the transmission on up in there. But if that's not something you want to do and you don't want to jack up the cab, let the engine lean back a little bit and put some angle on the transmission. That'll make that a lot easier. Let's see if I have any other points here and now. No, that's about it. I just wanted to share that because I know a lot of people were having trouble, especially with the ZF6, but some people just don't know all the little tricks to getting a transmission in by yourself. That'll honestly make the job pretty easy.